Friends and colleagues across the nation, welcome to today's webinar in our 2021 Minnesota TZD webinar series. Friends, we have pushed the technological limits today. We've got many speakers, incredible content. We're focusing today on data, diversity, and carefully crafted messages. How do we create impactful traffic safety campaigns that pop, that make a difference? My name is Mark Kindy. I'm one of the Minnesota TZD co-chairs and the manager of the Injury and Violence Prevention section at the Minnesota Department of Health. Our great thanks to and for all the individuals who've helped to put this TZD webinar series together. We have session organizers, e-leaders, speakers, moderators, tech experts, and folks behind the scenes. We depend on our partnership with the Center for Transportation Studies at the University of Minnesota and their organizational and technological expertise. Without all of you doing what you've done, this just would not have happened. We have great hosts, our National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and the Minnesota Department of Health. And great thanks also to our loyal and generous sponsors for the 2021 webinar series. We have Bolton and Menk, we have AAA Minnesota Iowa, the Auto Club, HDR, Highway Credit Union, and the Minnesota Prevention Alliance, and we are grateful. Now, before we start our official webinar presentation today, it's just exciting for me and a real honor to be able to recognize our TZD Award recipient for our Distinguished Public Leadership Award. And we're giving this award today, voted across from all those nominated and reviewing, to Paul Allison. Paul's passion and knowledge of traffic safety has allowed him to influence individuals, teams. Just look at my notes to make sure I just stay on track and don't wander too far afield, and entire organizations to make positive changes in Minnesota's traffic safety culture. Paul, for me, your wisdom, your ability to think in and outside the box has provided creative vision with sound outcomes. You're a strategist, a big picture thinker, and you've built all kinds of bridges to pull together a diverse set of stakeholders to form a unified front on legislative and other priorities. I think the thing that I've appreciated, Paul, is that you're not afraid to ask questions, to challenge what's been the status quo, and to step right into it. You listen and you process what you've heard. You're patient. You bring the right team of players to the table, from the grassroots perspective all the way to the governor's office, to make policy happen. You know the intricate details of the legislative process. You have just worked across the aisles and across the topics to improve traffic safety in Minnesota. You're a change agent, a strong advocate, a staunch supporter, and a dedicated partner. On top of all of this, you're humble, never needing to take credit for successes, always putting others before yourself. I've been blessed, and we're blessed in Minnesota, and fortunate to have you on our side. Just recently, I mean, over these last couple of years, Paul, you pulled together the group that helps sponsor Minnesota's hands-free legislation. Your work with our Farm Safety Working Group resulted in legislative implementation of the Tractor Rollover Protection Program. You worked to help pass our Work Zone Speed Management Study Bill. And you helped to plan, organize, and conduct our Making Our Roads Safe, a distracted driving roundtable event in partnership with Cargill. Paul, it's a joy and an honor, and I'll be quiet. And would you be willing to say a few words?
I feel obligated to after all of that. First of all, thank you to everybody for the award. It is extremely humbling to get an award from people you work with and your peers, and I greatly appreciate it. Um, it's an absolute honor and a privilege to get to work with the partners, colleagues, allies, advocates, collaborators, friends that we all get to work with on a day-to-day basis to make the roads of Minnesota safer for everybody who uses the roads. I don't know if I appreciated when I was younger how much of a privilege it is to get to work in that space, and to get to work in that space with all of you is extraordinary. And I cherish every moment of it. I mean, our work is a great reason to get out of bed in the morning. And I know when I go to bed at night, I feel good about the fact that we are trying to do something every single day to try to make the place, the world a little bit safer, the roads a little bit safer, Minnesotans a little bit healthier. And every single person on this call and hundreds of others plays a huge role in that. And I'm just thankful that I get to be part of that. So thank you again for the award. I greatly appreciate it. And I am truly looking forward to continuing all of our work. We've got some more to go, and we're going to do it together. So thank you.
Paul, thank you very much. Thanks again. Again, it's just a great honor. Congratulations. And I'm eager to keep on working with you as well. And now it's with further great joy that I get to turn things over to our moderator today, Meredith Mitz. And so Meredith, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Mark. For anyone who has joined late, you are here for the TZD webinar series with data diversity and carefully crafted messages, creating an impactful traffic safety campaign. We have a great lineup for us coming up, but before we get to that, let's go ahead and go through some housekeeping. There is a chat box on your menu, so if you have any questions or technical errors, go ahead and put it in there. If you have questions for the speaker specifically, please put that in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We will get to those questions at the end and try and do our best to answer all of them as time permits. But if there is something more immediate, I will go ahead and interject at the appropriate time. Reminder, all attendees have been muted and your videos have been turned off. We also have continuing education credits. So the TZD webinar series is proud to offer these credits. They are available. These are the list. And then if you need to find those forms, please go back to the TZD website and go into the data diversity and carefully crafted messages section, and that's where everything will be. For our law enforcement viewers, post-board credits are also available for this webinar. Please read this important announcement from the post board. And whether you're watching a live or recorded version, please make sure you're watching the entirety of this webinar and then follow the instructions on the TZD website. The link to the webpage will be put in the chat box, and the University of Minnesota will submit your complete affidavit of attendance to report to the post board. So the topic we're here for today, data diversity and carefully crafted messages. Do you ever wonder why traffic safety data, as shocking as it is, isn't enough to change driver behavior? Are you at a loss for how to structure a campaign that actually does change the behavior? This webinar will discuss change resistance and barriers to traffic safety messaging, when and where data can be leveraged, who you can partner with, how to craft a communication message that impacts traffic safety. The hands-free law is a real-life example of something that you can think about when going through this webinar and learning about ways that you can apply what you've learned. We can see the trends on the roadways and figure out how we can then craft a message to help Minnesotans recommit to distraction-free driving. As I said, we do have a great lineup today. We will hear from Eric DeVoe. He will be speaking on pre and post-pandemic changes and trends in crashes. We will also hear from Captain John Olson, and he will discuss the trends the officers are currently seeing on the highways and give us some insights into the focus areas for some of our upcoming efforts. Allison Hawley will talk about why people drive dangerously, what our message currently is, why people aren't listening, and then how we can re-engage. And then we will hear from Vijay Dixit and Lisa Kahns on resources that are currently available, how to collaborate with other agencies, who to form partnerships with, and what we can be doing in the future. So without any further delay, Eric, all you.
Thank you very much, Meredith. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about data, and we talk a lot in our projects about being data driven. But you know what? We still need to be driven. So today I'm going to try to do a real quick overview of what are we seeing on our Minnesota roads from March of 2020 through the end of October of 2021. All right, advance the slide. There it is. All right. I'm sorry about that. So to help us quickly recognize these trends, I want to present everything pretty standard for you, right? So we're going to present things by month. So we're really going to control for seasonality here because traffic volumes and all of that changes across the year. And also we're going to look at things in terms of a baseline year. In this case, a baseline is kind of what we would normally expect if nothing ever changed. This is going to be our 3-year average from 2017 to 2019. So as you can see, above the line, more crashes than expected, below the line, fewer. We're all on the same page. All right, let's dive into some data. Step 1, what happened out on our roads with traffic? So as we motor vehicle crashes really require the vehicles. We know this, right? In 2020, there was an unprecedented decrease in daily motor vehicle traffic beginning in March, bottomed out in April during those stay-at-home orders. And about a year later is when we're really starting to see traffic volumes grow back at that normal expected pace that we see year after year. So when we look at total motor vehicle crashes, these are crashes of all severities, all injury types, and we see a similar pattern. As we expect, number of motor vehicle crashes is going to mirror this, but the decreases are slightly larger. So there's more than just traffic volumes alone. There may be other human and weather factors that we can impact here with some of our programming. However, this pattern does not hold for crashes resulting in death and serious injury, even when we're controlling for seasonality. During the pandemic, summertime has resulted in more fatal and serious injury crashes than we would expect. Completely bucking that TZD downward trend that we've seen for the last 10 plus years. However, in 2021, this increase has been pretty consistent since February. We have been above where we would expect. So there's got to be something more than just traffic volumes contributing to what's going on here. So I'm going to change things a little bit. It's a little difficult sometimes when we're dealing with life-altering changes. Dealing with percents is always uncomfortable. So let's think about actual number of crashes that involve a fatality or serious injury as a deviation from that baseline, right? Over the entire pandemic period, there were 266 more severe crashes than we would expect. But we had a few good months and we had 248 fewer. So as a net, we see a net increase of about 18 over 20 months. So it's not large, but like I said, it's a deviation from that TZD trend, that line that we all know that has had great success over the last 10 plus years. Now let's kind of dig into what's going on. We look at impairment on our roads, and our general trend is we see fluctuations right around that baseline, but we're not seeing a consistent pattern. We're sort of bouncing up and down, kind of a little sine wave, if I may. There's limited evidence to suggest that any of our quarantine happy hours or drug use are appearing on our roads. All right, in both 2020 and 21, we are seeing some more in July and August than we would expect, but overall, we are not seeing a clear trend in impairment. However, we are seeing a bigger trend in unbelted occupants. So more and more of these crashes resulting in fatality and serious injury are involving a unbelted occupant. We see this sort of rise over time. We're not seeing that bounce above and below our baseline, but really completely above. But really, what's one of our biggest drivers here? It's speed. We are seeing consistently, beginning about summer of 2020, a consistent pattern of higher speeds or higher crashes resulting in death or serious injury. That speed was a major factor. This is particularly true in summer, and we know there are more speed crashes in summer, but even more during this pandemic. So what can we say? Let's do some quick takeaways so that you have something to say over Thanksgiving to your friends and family. So severe crashes resulting in fatality and serious injury in Minnesota remain elevated during this pandemic. And this is really caused by a prevalence of increased high-risk behavior, things like choosing to not wear a seatbelt or choosing to drive at higher speeds. In 2020, at the end of the year, our fatality rate, that is the number of deaths on our Minnesota roads, given the traffic volumes that we see, was up 23% from that baseline. In this year, 2020 alone, through the end of October, if we're still looking at that baseline, that 3-year average, fatalities are up over 30%. That's 100 more deaths on our roadway than in that 3-year average, or 80 more than 2020, where we already had higher. So the action is there, but now we need to take this data and say, what can we do with it? How can we turn this into meaningful action? And that's where I will turn it back to Meredith, and hopefully she can lead us to our next steps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. Up next, we are going to be hearing from Captain John Olson about the trends on the roadways. Captain.
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to get a few minutes to be in front of all of you and say quick words. I appreciate Eric's message this morning, great information on data and what we're doing specifically with speed and seatbelt. For the next few minutes, I'm going to spend time talking about distracted driving and what data is showing us or not showing us as we move forward here. Let's advance. So my question to all of you, if we were live and in person, I would ask you, do we really need data to know what is going on out there, especially as it relates to distracted driving? Well, this may sound like a funny comment to say, but we all know that the special bond that exists between society and the things that we commonly refer to as smartphones is very strong. And for some, it's almost unbreakable. But what is the data really showing us? So when I talk about data, I think, okay, is my perception about what is going on the highways today the reality? Now, quick story. August 1st, 2019, I remember the day like it was yesterday. Obviously, that day was the first day where the legislators of this state said, we are going to be a hands-free state. That line finally got drawn in the sand. And I remember that day vividly. I remember saying to myself, okay, being an individual who spends the majority of their time in an office setting, I said to myself, I am not going to go to the office until I stop at least one person for violating the hands-free law. So my commute is not very long. It's about 20-25 minutes. And I got to the office and I did not see a single person on their cell phone. And I thought for a minute, you know what? I actually have some hope for humanity. Like maybe we got the message and we can do this as a group. We can put our phones away and really focus on what's important. And that is what is in front of us in the windshield while we're operating our automobiles. Now, obviously, that didn't take long for that novelty of mine to wear off because in my mind, the perception is we have a very, very long ways to go when it comes to cracking this nut. Quick search media, and obviously we all know that it's clearly a problem out there. Just some random media highlights that are out there. We all know that distracted driving is alive and well when you're out there operating on the roadways. We're still killing lots of people, sadly. And we're still writing citations for people that are violating this law. Now, again, I challenge you, is your perception the reality of what we're seeing out there? I want you to think about that and think about, what do you see? And then when you think about that, let's really talk about the numbers and let's see what kind of data we're actually capturing out there. So what does the data tell us? Well, so far year to date, we have 51,000 crashes and counting. Now crashes are, as Eric said, overall quite a bit lower than what we had for our baseline, as Eric covered earlier. 2019, we had a total of 80,000 crashes. And that's total across the state, all levels of injury and fatality and property damage. COVID being COVID, we only had 58,000 crashes. Now, let's take a look briefly at texting, cell phone use while in hands-free mode. That's the second column. And then cell phone use, having the phone up to your head. Now, when you look at the data in terms of how many times that's being captured in a Minnesota crash report, the numbers are actually quite low. They were a lot lower than what I was expecting or anticipating. Again, perception versus the reality. Now, all of us in law enforcement know that cell phone use and a crash investigation sometimes is very, very difficult to prove. Majority of people are not always forthright when it comes to, yes, I was involved in this crash. I was on my phone. I didn't see the person stop in front of me, or I didn't see the stop sign, or, you know, whatever the answer is. So as a whole, we look at even 19, so 19 being a full year, 2020 being 12 months as well, and then year to date, you know, the numbers aren't really shouting at us. They're not saying this is a problem, though we all know that it is. But here's what I found really interesting when I took a step back. Crashes where driver distracted noted is a part of the Minnesota crash report. So remember when I said that there were only 51,000 crashes year to date? That only counts for 7%. 7%. Now, my challenge for law enforcement is to really think about that and go, okay, am I really capturing the essence of this crash? You know, there are a lot of times where we don't know what happened, or it's the simple rear end crash. You know, I work in the metro, and how many times do we have a rear end property damage crash during rush hour? And the driver's like, well, I just didn't see the person stop in front of me. Well, what were you doing? Because I'm sure it was more than just looking around and thinking, oh gosh, that cloud over there looks like an elephant, or looks, or whatever. Like there's always a reason for what is going on. And drivers are not always forthright when it comes to what were they doing. I feel like one of the negatives or the downsides to the hands-free law is we've gone from this, and we all see this. Now we're driving down the road and we see this. People looking down. Why are they looking down? Because they're trying to hide the fact that they were actually on their phone, or they were texting, or they were accessing the web, or whatever their story is. So my challenge is to really try to dial that down and really press people for the answer. Again, the simple property damage crash, rear end during rush hour, where there really is no explanation. We all know that there has to be some type of distraction going on. Put that in your narrative of the crash report. You know, take the time and really think about that and help us really capture the data that we all know is out there, making sure that the data reflects the reality, which will hopefully reflect the perceptions and the message that we create for the media and for the motoring public as we try to, again, crack this nut, so to speak. So switching gears real quickly, let's talk about citation data for a second. What is law enforcement doing? And it's not just law enforcement. Law enforcement cannot solve this problem all on our own. We need to get prosecutor buy-in. We need judicial buy-in. But what we really need is we need the public to finally go, okay, we get it. Enough's enough. But I feel like we need the data to support the media helping us get that message out. So 2019, again, that was only so from August 1st through the end of the year. As a state, we wrote 10,000 citations for one of the three violations, whether being on your phone, not in a hands-free mode, accessing the web, or texting. 10,000. 2020, a full calendar year, 12 months, we almost doubled citation numbers. Nearly 20,000 citations were written across the entire state. But 2021 year to date, we're down to 13,000. Now, it's been a challenging couple of years for law enforcement. We all know that. Again, going back to what's the challenge here is to really think about trying to get the message out there to the people. Sometimes issuing a warning is the right thing to do. A lot of times, maybe it's not. And we need to think about that and think about how to help the public really understand that this is an issue that they need to be concerned with, especially as we talk about trying to create a traffic safety message that is impactful, powerful, and can make a positive change. Looking at the citation data by violation type, again, it's kind of all across the board. Call in a hands-free mode obviously was is the leader in that, but again, we've seen a steady decline in all three areas, moving from 19 to 20, and then now into 2021. So we've spent 10 minutes now talking about the what in terms of data. We all know who the who is. It's all of us, it's society at large. And now I look forward to hearing from Allison and trying to figure out maybe the why and what we can do about it as we move forward. Meredith?
Thank you, Captain Olson. As he said, we are going to hear from Allison. She has the longest presentation of the bunch, so I'm very excited to hear the data that she has for us. Go ahead, Allison.
Thank you very much, Meredith. Just share my screen here. Okay. Can you see that? Can everybody see the slides? Working?
Yes, they're coming through fine.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for giving me the chance to speak with you today. We all know that approximately 95% of crashes can be attributed to human behavior. So logic follows that, while roadway and vehicle engineering solutions are absolutely instrumental in reducing crash numbers and crash severity, in order to approach our TZD goalposts of 0 deaths, driver behaviors must change. So how do we change behaviors? Well, deterrence by means of law enforcement certainly plays a large role, but alone it's not enough. The only way to affect widespread and long-term behavioral change is by changing beliefs related to the role that every person plays in keeping our roadways safe, our social contract. Changing beliefs leads to changes in behaviors, and it lies at the heart of traffic safety culture. So practicing safe driving behavior seems like a no-brainer. I mean, would anyone actually disagree that we should all drive safely? Yet, if everyone were on board with this obvious and crucial societal agreement, then, why do we see reckless driving on our roadways every single day? Is more information the key? The data are indisputable, and they tell us which behaviors contribute to fatalities and injuries on our roadways. The data tell us all we need to know about the connections between dangerous driving and negative outcomes. Yet, studies have shown that bombarding people with facts and data does very little to change behavior. So if that's the case, then what will? Well, this presentation will delve into the challenges we face as traffic safety officials when we're attempting to affect changes in beliefs that lead to safer driving behaviors, which in turn lead to measurable traffic safety improvements. So today I will discuss why some people tend to take the risk more than others of driving dangerously. And this thrill-seeking behavior, otherwise known as excitement-seeking or sensation-seeking, has been strongly correlated to dangerous driving behavior. So I'll talk about some of the factors that contribute to that sort of behavior. And then I will, discuss some of the points of resistance people sometimes have to adopting the behavioral changes that will make themselves and everyone else safer, and some of the underlying psychological and social causes to the resistance of certain types of messaging. That's the second part of the presentation. And the third part of the presentation, I will discuss some of the strategies that traffic safety stakeholders can use to overcome these obstacles and make some strides toward widespread traffic safety culture. So why do people engage in risky behavior? Well, you have to admit, we all want some excitement once in a while, right? Well, what exactly is excitement, and why do we seek out that feeling? Well, excitement is a physical and mental response to some sort of stimulus that arouses our senses. We become more alert, our heart rate speeds up, we breathe more deeply, perhaps we sweat, we get a dry mouth, all functions of the autonomic nervous system. Our adrenal glands are stimulated, flooding our body with adrenaline. Our brain becomes more alert and active, caused by the reticular activating system found in our brainstem. So what is it about this response that's so appealing? Well, excitement seeking, otherwise known interchangeably as thrill seeking or sensation seeking, is part of our evolutionary history. The thrill of a successful hunt, the discovery of yet unknown places, the energy of religious or social ceremonies, the elation of victory in battle. Now, these successes, all tied up in excitement, were crucial for our survival as a species. So it would follow that we have an innate attraction to this feeling. So, as you probably have deduced, fear and anxiety are the other side of the excitement coin. The same physical responses are induced. The difference is that one is positive and the other is negative. So what determines whether a situation is perceived as exciting or scary? It's the same physical response. The difference then is psychological. Michael Apter, the author of The Dangerous Edge, says that the difference is the presence of what he calls a protective frame. If you have a protective frame or a perceived protective frame, then a situation is exciting. If you don't, it's scary and a negative experience. So what is a protective frame? It's actual or perceived protection from real harm. And that harm can be physical harm, it can be financial, it can be social, etc. And Apter defines, or he describes 3 types of protective frames. The first, he calls it confidence frame. And this is a situation, basically the person knows that the situation is risky, they're aware of the risks, but they are confident in their skills or their luck or their immortality or whatever it is to counteract the risks of the situation. So an example would be a rock climber who's climbing rocks without safety equipment. Now, these rock climbers they understand the risk of the situation, but they're confident enough in their skills to overcome that risk so that the situation is more positive than it is negative. And you can already start thinking about the traffic safety applications of this type of confidence frame. For example, in our 2020 telephone survey, the young men surveyed believed that they were unlikely to get a speeding ticket when they're speeding. Okay, that's financial harm at the very least. They're aware that there is a risk of getting a ticket, but they are confident in their luck or maybe their radar detector to overcome that risk. The second type of frame that he talks about he calls the safety zone frame. And this is when, this is essentially the person feels that there isn't a risk of real harm. For instance, if let's say somebody is speeding on a rural roadway, it's straight, it's level, there's no traffic, so they feel like, oh, this isn't a risky situation, but they're discounting extraneous circumstances that could actually cause them to crash. Tom Vanderbilt, in his book Traffic, alludes to this principle as well. He says that when people feel that circumstances are safer, they're more likely to take risks. So safer circumstances can actually lead to more dangerous driving behavior. So that's the safety zone frame. And then the last one is the detachment frame. And this is essentially just watching from a place of total safety. For example, when you watch a scary movie or when you spectate a sport from the stand. And so, people who have the perception of one of these protective frames are more likely to participate in this thrill-seeking, sensation-seeking behavior. And according to Apter, there are two sort of general states of mind that people tend to be in: the excitement-seeking state that we've been talking about, or the anxiety avoidance. And the difference here is, like, for example, feeling bored, that's excitement-seeking, versus feeling relaxed, that's anxiety avoidance. Finding a situation thrilling, that's excitement-seeking, versus finding a situation terrifying, and that's anxiety avoidance. People tend to be in one or the other of these states, and some people have more of a tendency to be in the excitement-seeking, the sensation-seeking state than other people do, but we all tend to kind of oscillate between the two depending on the situation and the presence or absence of a protective frame. So what factors can contribute to people tending to be in this thrill-seeking state that can lead to dangerous behaviors, including dangerous driving? There are some biological differences that contribute to this sensation-seeking behavior. And sensation-seeking is a top predictor of engagement in risky behaviors, including dangerous driving. Studies have shown this. Sensation-seeking has been linked to a hypersensitivity to intense and novel stimuli. Specifically, people who are sensation-seeking have a larger response to stimuli in the posterior medial orbital frontal cortex, which plays a role in decision-making and reinforcement and reward. So there are some neurological differences that contribute to this. In addition to neurological differences, we have personality differences based on history, experience with various types of risks and rewards. So someone who has endured a trauma related to a specific activity, such as reckless driving, is much less likely to participate in that behavior in the future. However, if someone, has participated in that behavior and not experienced any negative consequences, they're less likely to cease that behavior and see the risks. Mental health and trauma do play a role in the tendency to be sensation-seeking. Anger and hostility, and I'm speaking both as a steady emotional state or as a transient dispositional state, are strong predictors of dangerous driving. Another study found an association between depression, psychological distress, aggression, antisocial behavior in adolescents and young adults, and sensation-seeking and dangerous driving. And the connection was much stronger with these younger people than it was with older people, which emphasizes the importance of reaching our drivers at a young age. And then, probably not surprisingly, age and sex were also correlated to sensation-seeking and dangerous driving. Specifically, young males had more of a tendency towards these behaviors. And then the final contributor to this type of behavior, dangerous driving and sensation-seeking, is social norms. We tend to do what is acceptable within our peer groups, within our communities, within the social circle whom we feel comfortable. Humans are evolved to be very social creatures, regardless of whether you consider yourself a wallflower or a social butterfly. Belonging to one group or another is how hominids have survived and flourished for millions of years, Homo sapiens for 200,000 years. Without our group support, protection, sharing, cooperation, our species would never have survived this long. And that, just highlights the importance to us to fit into our social group. So if driving safely isn't a value in our social group, or if speeding and driving recklessly is acceptable in our group, we're more likely to just go along with our group. So these are, factors that contribute to this behavior, the sensation-seeking, the dangerous driving behavior. And now what we're trying to do as traffic safety officials is to counteract that and to tell people to please stop it and to show them why it's so important that they practice safe driving behaviors. But why doesn't it always work? Well, I'm going to discuss 5 concepts here that I have found can contribute to resistance to our messaging. And this is by no means a comprehensive list, and I am no expert by any stretch of the imagination. This is just what I have come up with during my research. So cognitive dissonance theory, the actual message that we're delivering, who is delivering the message. Again, we'll talk about social norms and conformist bias, and what I call solution aversion. So why doesn't just giving the facts work? Why can't we just show a bunch of graphs and charts and stuff to show people this is what happens when you do this? Well, studies have shown that campaigns which fire off messages and information about what target audiences should do have very little effect on behavior. And the first topic that I want to bring up is this cognitive dissonance theory. Zimbardo and Edison discuss this in their book, Influencing Attitudes and Behavior. It's the idea that humans cannot tolerate inconsistency and try to eliminate it or reduce it when it exists. For instance, if someone has a sensation-seeking personality, they love to speed on the roadways. It's their favorite activity. But they're shown indisputable facts that speeding is a top contributor to fatal crashes. Well, this causes a psychological inconsistency that must be resolved. So how is it resolved? Well, either they can stop speeding, that's resolved, or they can do what is called cognitive overlap. They can rationalize an agreement between the two statements. For example, that may be true, but when I speed, it's not dangerous because I only speed when it's safe and I am an excellent driver. So yeah, the fact may be true, but it doesn't apply to me. This is also known as the above average law or the Lake Wobegon effect. You guys are familiar with that. Polls have shown that people believe, and this is kind of crazy, polls have shown that people believe other people should have to follow stricter traffic rules, but it's okay to bend the rules themselves because of their above average driving skills, right? Studies have also shown that narcissism is on the rise, and this contributes to an inflated sense of one's own skills. So that's one way to reconcile it. The other way to reconcile it is to dismiss the message itself as false, fake news, not coming from a trustworthy source. And in the way we can reconcile this cognitive dissonance. It's another example. Heavy smoker is told that cigarettes are dangerous for the health. Either they stop smoking or they say, no, the research is false, it's inconclusive. Oh, phew, now I can keep smoking without that cognitive dissonance. So the next point of resistance could be the message itself. And the way that it's delivered. So, like I've mentioned a couple of times, current research shows that firing off facts and showing charts and graphs does really little to affect people and does little to change their behavior. So the podcast Hidden Brain, hosted by Shankar Vedanta, discusses this in some detail. And he talks about how if a message confirms our beliefs, it strengthens them. But if a message contradicts our beliefs, we dismiss the statement as false. And often we double down on our current beliefs when we're given facts to the contrary. We distance ourselves from the data or discredit it. That's why it's so hard to change beliefs. In addition, it may be possible to dismiss the unwanted message because of the lack of feedback loops. And that this is sometimes the case with dangerous driving. So often we learn not to touch a hot stove because we get immediate feedback. Oh, it's hot, we have a negative outcome. It doesn't always happen with dangerous driving. Sometimes we don't have a negative outcome if we participate in that behavior. And so we don't have that continuous feedback loop. So how if we can't just fire off charts and graphs, what will work? Well, emotional appeals have shown to be much, much more effective. This is because certain regions of our brain are more greatly affected when we have an emotional response. So that's something to think about when you're delivering your messages, is really trying to appeal to emotions, but being specific, appealing to the emotions of your specific audience. So fear is a strong emotion. That can be an effective tool in context in which the listeners accept that there is danger to the situation. It's best to approach this emotional response as targeted to tap into your audience's needs and desires. For instance, parents desire the safety of their children. You tap into those emotions when talking about teen driver safety. Young men may desire to fit in with their friends, to show their skills and experience adventure and excitement. So thinking about who you're talking to and what are their needs, their desires, what kind of emotional appeal will work for that audience. The next point of resistance, I like to call the ineffective messenger. Who is delivering the message is just as important as what the message is. It's much more likely we'll accept a message of someone who is considered likable. If you're Michael Scott, you're likely to listen to Jim. You're much more likely to listen to Jim than you are, say, to Toby, because you hate Toby and Toby is the worst. And so you're not going to listen to him. So you want to find a messenger, a speaker, to deliver the message that people like, that your specific group likes, to be specific. They'll only listen to someone, in addition to being likable, person should be trustworthy and credible. Our beliefs are grounded in social trust. We can't verify most of the facts that we believe that we're given. So we trust our sources to provide us accurate information. So we must believe that our messenger is trustworthy and credible. The other important factor that might be surprising is that the messenger, we should have similarity to our messenger. We should be able to identify with our messenger in some way. We're much more likely to listen to someone who is like us, to have a connection in some way. It could be a shared viewpoint, it could be the same religious group or political party, the same hometown or sports team, but there should be some point of connection so that you're starting off on the same page. And this kind of runs into our next point of social norms and conformist bias. So behavior is shaped by modeling the behavior of others in your community. This is your family, your friends, your social groups. We as a social species tend to follow the lead of our fellow humans, at least the ones who we come into contact with, connect with, identify with. So when you see others do something, you're more likely to do it. If you have the impression that others are doing something, you're more likely to do that thing. Fitting in, even if it's subconscious, is highly important to humans. And we'll go along with what we believe is the social norm. I mean, you've seen this in, like, you know, those elevator experiments where if you have people turn toward the back wall, then everybody who comes into the elevator will do the same thing. We just, even subconsciously, we want to fit in with those around us. If we believe it's the norm to speed, that everyone is speeding, either from seeing a lot of speeders on the road or being given the message that everyone is speeding, this gives us permission to model that behavior, even when the message is meant to deter the behavior. You know, in this way, you can end up with a self-perpetuating problem. An example of this can be seen from an analysis of stealing of petrified wood from a protected forest. So people were stealing this wood, and then after a sign was posted appealing to guests not to steal this endangered wood because so many people were stealing it, that's what the sign said, there was an increase in the theft of the petrified wood rather than a decrease. Just have this tendency, if everyone's doing something, oh, I guess I can do it too. And conformist bias is the idea that, you know, people who know each other pass information back and forth. That's the way that people interact. However, it can hinder the introduction of new ideas. It's your echo chamber. If the group is too tightly knit, or if divergent ideas are kept out, we don't like to state conflict, you know, with others in our community. It's uncomfortable. It's hard to risk conflict among the people with whom we spend our time, who we like, who we identify with and care about, even though really those are the people that are most likely to listen and be receptive to the message if it's presented in the right way. And so the final point that I'm going to talk about, point of resistance to our messaging, I'm going to talk about, if I can advance my slide, is solution aversion. And this is really quite similar to cognitive dissonance, but I'm focusing more on the solution here. You know, this is the idea that I don't like the solution that's being proposed, so I deny that there is a problem. I mean, if, you know, motorcycle helmets are supposed to protect me, but I think I look like an idiot in them, and you know, I can't feel the wind through my hair, then maybe they're not so necessary for safety after all. So I just bring this up to mention that we should focus on our proposed solution. What could be causing the resistance to that solution, and how can we maybe frame it in a different light? So now that I have talked about why some people participate in this behavior that most of us consider to be completely, you know, just beyond the pale, and why we're not always getting across the way we want to come across. Now I want to talk about some strategies we can use to overcome these roadblocks and truly influence behavior. I'm going to use Robert Cialdini's 7 strategies to influence behavior, and apply each of these strategies to traffic safety messaging. How can we use Robert Cialdini's strategies for traffic safety messaging? He's a professor emeritus with Arizona State University, a renowned psychologist, and has written books on influence. And this is his most renowned book on influence. That's what I'm taking this from. His strategies are meant to produce an automated compliance, which is how we make most decisions as humans. Without mental shortcuts, we would be overwhelmed with every single decision that we make. And these shortcuts also help explain why giving someone data and facts in hopes that they will sit there and analyze and reevaluate behavior is often unsuccessful. Most decisions that we make in the moment are instinctual, they're automated, they're habitual responses rather than calculated analyses. So the first I'm going to talk about is social proof. We've discussed the importance of being part of a group and the power of social norms. So how can we apply this concept to counteract resistance to traffic safety messaging and make some headway towards changing dangerous driving behaviors? Well, we need to select as our messengers. I've discussed resistance to, messengers that we don't like, that we don't trust. We need to select the messengers with care. We've discussed the traits of an effective messenger, and this goes hand in hand with group identity. The messenger should come from within the peer group of whom the people we're trying to reach. This could be trusted community members, friends, family, or role models or respected figures for this group. For instance, if we're trying to reach elderly populations about the importance of reevaluating driving abilities or self-regulating, we would be much better if we chose a messenger who came from within, who was an older member of society, okay, who came from within the senior community, perhaps a church group or another club or a society, somebody who's respected in the senior community and who is a senior themselves. These efforts are often very grassroots. However, on the other side of the coin, a message coming from a popular personality, like a political figure that resonates with a group, or an actor or a sports star, can be very effective if this group that we're trying to reach really respects this role model and identifies with them. The point is to get them to see the behavior, to get your audience to see the behavior as normal and pervasive among their group, their social group, or whichever group they identify with. Along those lines, portraying negative behavior as abnormal is important, not common, not widespread. We have to, it's counterintuitive, but we have to portray bad behaviors as aberrant and not accepted at all in our society. We talked earlier about risk factors. So it's important to address acceptable driving behavior at a very young age when people are learning to drive. Provide support for potentially high-risk drivers. We talked about mental state contributors to driving, mental health issues. So it's important to provide support for potentially high-risk drivers to create communities that embrace traffic safety culture when they're young and have the support to address issues that contribute to dating behavior. The licensure process and additional components of driver training that address mental health risks, really instilling this traffic safety culture when people are young. The next strategy is reciprocity. People want to meet the expectations of someone they respect and who respects them in return. Showing that you respect your audience, that you have confidence in their standards and their values. And again, this goes with how we deliver the message and who the messenger is, and expect that they will make the right choices. Set high standards. Setting high standards for your audience often results in your audience setting high standards for themselves, internalizing those messages and values. So the messenger should never talk down to their audience and should always show a great deal of respect. Liking. We talked about liking when we talked about the effective messenger, but to reiterate that a messenger should be liked by the listener and vice versa. The messenger should like the audience and should show that. That should be very clear. Showing that you respect your audience, that you have that you like your audience, really helps people listen to your message. We can tell when someone doesn't like us, and that makes us resistant to messaging. It's important that the speaker really make this clear. Next strategy, we have, Authority. People who are considered to have authority have more influence than those who do not, which, yeah, that seems obvious. However, we should consider who our target audiences assign the status of having authority. We really have to tailor our messages and our messengers to our very specific audience. So when considering whether someone delivering a message has authority, we question whether they are an expert in their field, whether they are trustworthy, and whether they have a bias or self-interest in the message. For instance, some people may not trust governmental or political figures, and so they won't listen to a message delivered by those people, and may assume that they have a self-interest in the message. This makes it much less likely that the message will be embraced. Others may not consider messengers who are outside of their community or outside of their political party to have authority. This is why local efforts are so vital, and also that we are examining carefully the groups, the subgroups, the cultures, the countercultures that we are trying to reach. Messages and messengers should be tailored accordingly. Broad brushstrokes are no longer enough. We need engagement at all levels of society, all corners of society. The next strategy is scarcity. We want things that are coveted and scarce, even if we normally wouldn't necessarily even want those things. So how can we apply that to traffic safety? Well, you know, an idea to apply this concept could be to design incentive programs, for instance. For example, you could have a competition. The high school that develops the best teen driver safety program in the state gets a special award and recognition at the next TZD. You can have a slogan competition where the best, the funniest, or the most impactful traffic safety message gets selected and broadcast the whole year. You know, designing these kind of incentives programs taps into this need for things that are scarce. It also can help widen our reach and engage more people in our mission. Unity is the idea that we all unite together against a common enemy or for a common cause. So if we can frame traffic safety as our common cause, that's of course our mission, easier said than done, but feeling like we're all in something together really helps us put our effort towards it. And then finally, we're going to talk about commitment and consistency. Most people want to be consistent, or at least appear to be consistent between their beliefs and their actions. And again, this speaks to the cognitive dissonance issue that we talked about earlier. If people think of themselves as having certain beliefs or standards, they're more likely to want to behave in a way that's consistent with those beliefs. So setting your standards, like I discussed a little bit before, setting your standards high for your listeners to live up to and showing confidence and respect for their wise choices may lead to behavior consistent with those choices. If your audience can internalize those beliefs. Something like, thank you for being conscientious drivers and for being role models for your friends, your family, and your colleagues. And again, combining these strategies, of choosing an emotional appeal for your message, choosing an appropriate person to deliver the message, presenting safe driving as a social norm, and showing respect and confidence can all contribute towards influencing beliefs and behavior. So, I hope our discussion today leads to more conversation, out-of-the-box ideas, innovative strategies. Today, we've briefly discussed why some people are more likely to take risks than others, some of the roadblocks to changing behavior for the better, and some of the strategies we can employ to counteract those obstacles and make strides toward creating a traffic safety culture to achieve our mission. The reason we're all here today, to save lives and prevent injuries on our roadways. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Meredith.
Thank you so much. We are running a little bit behind, so our last presentation will take roughly 5 to 10 minutes, and that means that we will be starting a Q&A after that. If you do not have the time to stay on, we understand. We want to be respectful. This was supposed to end at 11:15. Feel free to send your questions over to myself or Linda or directly to the panelists if you need to do that. But now we will hear from Vijay Dixit and Lisa Cottons.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it's been a pleasure to be with part of this audience, great audience. In fact, Allison's presentation was a very good segue into what I'm talking about, as well as what Lisa is talking about. Lisa is going to be talking about conversing with the corporations. My focus is on targeting the young audience. The target audience of Shreya Foundations are teens and youth. They're bright, they're always in a hurry. No one can deny that. So in the past 14 years, we have used an incentivized model of conversation with active youth engagement. It has really performed extremely well and with remarkable results. How did we do it? Well, we designed what I call an ecosystem for them. An ecosystem or a sound, you can call it a sandbox or whatever you want to call it. But we wanted them to experience distracted driving by themselves, learn what it can do to them. And those they love. Just like you cannot learn how to swim by just reading a book. You must jump in that pool. There is no other option available to you. But jumping into that sandbox, they all get together, learn, experience distracted driving, immerse themselves discussing safety issues, unsafe driving practices, and brainstorm ideas for helping each other, their peers, and even their elders about distraction-free lives. So this ecosystem consists of two primary components where I feel that we have been able to really tap these target audience. Distraction-free life clubs at high schools, and also we created a couple of years ago Students for Safe Streets internships. And at this time, I would like to show you some of the examples of their creativity, what these individual 16, 17-year-old kids can do. Here is an intelligent calendar that heals, inspired by an art workshop that we had created for teams, where they conducted coaching lessons to teach elementary school students what we call the distraction for drivers in the making, drivers in the learning. And about this particular workshop, there were a lot of powerful messages, sketches that came out. And Ayesh Gujral, who's 17-year-old Ayesh Gujral from Eden Prairie High School, created this powerful calendar. It has 3 types of tips and data, along with the very revealing messages done by 6 to 7, 11-year-old kids. But one thing that was very prominent was the most moving one was the butterfly icons that mark dates, memorializing lives and lost with loved ones, and memorializing the dates with those butterfly icon is a very healing experience. And now let me go to the next one. Next one is actually a set of sketches that a 16-year-old Michelle Garcia Robel from Chaska created. She wants to be an artist, professional artist, but she created this eye-popping pencil drawings of distracted driving. In fact, the school was so impressed by her that they showcased it in their lobby. And we are engaging these individuals in that manner. And now the next one, again, Ayush comes up with another very interesting information soundbox, what we call the channel of distraction-free driving clubs. So he calls it a distraction-free life channel podcast. And he has been able to actually interview many in this meeting, Paul Allison, Mike Hansen, Colonel Langer, and he keeps interviewing, he hosts those podcasts. And now the last one is real dear to me. It is created by actually Elizabeth Becker from the Wayzata Public Schools. And I really don't even have to introduce it. This 18-second video clip, animated video clip, is so powerful that you just are blown away after it's over. Lisa, let's go with it. How powerful it is. Did it go through, Lisa?
It did.
Did it play?
It did.
Yes. So that's what I have to say. And here's my friend, Lisa.
Thank you, VJ. As VJ mentioned, we are sharing some powerful resources. And so that was our part of this. Some of our great colleagues have presented before us, and they've wrapped up and stated the case about what's going on our roadways and shared some great data. And so what VJ and I are wrapping up with is having that conversation. It's so important to have the conversation outside of our workspace. We do it so well together and in the office and networking and in meetings, but it's so important outside of the office to continue the conversation about what's happening on our roadways. As Eric mentioned, having that conversation maybe over the dinner table at Thanksgiving, when you're having your haircut at the grocery store, because quite frankly, I just don't think people are hearing it enough right now. And using the data that's been presented today, and how I like to tell people is we thrive on that data. When they say the 100% of the 2% of the 3% and all those fancy graphs, but when we can take that data and wrap it up into an infographic, so it tells a story, a beautiful story that people can understand. And then the best part is don't recreate the wheel. Use the resources that have been readily developed so we don't have to recreate the wheel, and by partnering together. So I'm just going to run through real quickly some resources that are here for you. I am also the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety State Coordinator. We have a website that is launched right in the Minnesota Safety Council's website. If you click on it, you'll be directed to different topic safety matters. Distracted driving, I'm not going to read through these because you know how to read, but if you click on that subject matter, you'll be given a whole bunch of different resources that are readily available to you. And I'm just going to highlight a couple topics that have been recently updated that we are excited to share with you. As Captain John Olson mentioned, he talked about hands-free today. And we have noticed, and whether it's perception or reality, that hands-free issue and whether old habits have come back to haunt us, we might be seeing people back on those phones again. And as he mentioned, the head bobber and between the legs. So please feel free to share these resources that are out there. Throw your name in it, send it to an employer, use it at a high school, all sorts of great turnkey messages that are there waiting for you to just put your name in, hit turn, hit send. There's some video options that are readily available right here. We had a PSA that we created with the hands-free 1-year anniversary. I put the URL in there. So when this video, this is going to be taped. So feel free to go back in here, but play around on our website. Although this says for employers, schools can use these resources too. This is about giving these messages to the good drivers out there. So we're prepared when you're up against somebody who's on their phone, when you're up against a speeder, when you're out there and somebody is doing something that might be not quite as safe in the lane next to you, your employee, your friend, your colleague, your community member is prepared to do the right thing. That is what we're really keying in on right now. We created earlier this spring a traffic safety video campaign series. Please feel free to hit send on these. These are great. An email blast at the end of the day. Hey, it's a beautiful sunshiny day. Drive safe and send out a speed message. Work zone safety. There was a great article in the Star Tribune this weekend about how work zone safety is creeping up on us again. Over 700 crashes this year. That's a great reminder to all of us. Eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, mind in the game. Don't drive impaired. I'm preaching to the choir, but again, having that conversation and sharing those messages. And then there's some great resources right in our own backyard with the Department of Public Safety that you can click on. That 8 seconds video that is fabulous, that has won some awards. Handsfree Minnesota.org, and then again, drivesmartminnesota.org. So again, turnkey resources, don't recreate the wheel. And I would be remiss if I did not share the new Speed Counts campaign. We know what's going on our roadways. We know the numbers are going in the wrong direction. So with help from some fabulous partners, the Minnesota Speed Action Team, and with support of DPS Communications, we turned to campaign rather quickly. We put together some great turnkey resources, templates, news articles, infographics, videos, how to have the conversation and resources. Again, it's about turnkey, partner with those who have already done the work and then just hit send. So I went through this extremely quickly, but again, VJ and I wanted to share with you today some resources that are readily available, because the perception and the reality might be two different things. But what we do know is that our loved ones, our friends, our family, our colleagues, every single one of those fatalities out there has a name and a face related with it. And we are doing our best to try to solve that and get those back down to zero. And by sharing these messages together, we can do that. So with that, I will conclude. There's my contact information. I'm going to turn this back over to Meredith and we will open up for Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and all other panelists, and for everyone for sticking with us. If you have just a minute, we would love for you to please complete this evaluation. You can just scan the QR code with your phone. It will really help us out, and the leadership team and all of the planners for next year really do actually read your feedback so we can know what you want to hear and what we can be doing. Due to the time that it already is, I'm going to go ahead and ask that if you asked one of those couple of questions that we had, or if you have other questions that come up as you were thinking back on this presentation, that you go ahead and reach out to those panelists directly. And again, thank you all so much for your time, and thank you presenters for giving us such great content to think about. There's also the evaluation in the chat box if your QR code isn't working.